let's talk about the ring. First though, I want to thank all of you for your incredible support that you've given to the previous videos. All your comments and views help me keep this series going. I do want to apologize for the wait on this video though. Aside from personal life things getting in the way, a big hurdle this time was I've never seen a Ring movie. When I did the Ju-on video 2 years ago, oh my god, I had already seen most of the films and had a big supply of things to say about the franchise. Ring though, I had to start from the ground up, collect as many Ring items as I could, and learn what proper order they all go in. It was absolutely worth it in the end, but I didn't want to make this video without an equal amount of passion that I gave to Ju-on. So, starting from the beginning, strap yourselves in, because we have a lot to cover. There are 11 movies in this franchise, as well as a TV series. And of course, as I've said before, these films are known as Ringu in Japan and The Ring in America. The first Ring anything came in novel form. Author Koji Suzuki wrote Ringu in 1991, which jumped into bestseller territory. This caused him to write more novels for the series and earning Koji the title Stephen King of Japan. Yes, 1991. That predates the first Ju-on short films in 1998. Even the first Ringu movie came out in 1995, so yes, Ring did come before Grudge. Ring Cunzhen was the very first Ring TV movie. It follows the book very closely, which means you'll notice some key differences if you're familiar with the later films. While The Ring is known as a supernatural ghost story, this feels more like a medical murder mystery. There's no ringing phones, instead people are suffering violent heart attacks. If you've seen the Ring tape before, this tape is totally different and goes on for a long time. Sadako does not resemble her current look at all, but she isn't really the monster here either. It's the virus left over from her dying will. No long-haired, ultra-powered ghost girls in this film. Cunzhen is interesting, but not incredibly well done. It's filled with naked exploitation scenes, and even the parts closest to horror are ruined by exaggerated camera work and strobe lights. But this film did help keep interest alive until a real film adaptation can be made, so I thank it for that. Then Ringu happened and interest skyrocketed. This is the film that really took off. Directed by Hideo Nakata, Ringu became Japan's highest grossing horror film. I actually really recommend this DVD set. It contains the first 4 Ringu movies minus Cunzhen, and it actually has a really cool look to it. It's funny, despite this being where this all started, all the rules already feel well known and established. We're barely 2 minutes in and this girl has already explained how the entire curse works in a joking context. Talk about getting your exposition out of the way early. I've been avoiding comparing this series to Ju-on at all, as I want to judge it for what it is and not what it isn't. But this one's a little different for me. This was the only Ring movie I saw before making this video. I remember back then not being as impressed with Ringu as I was with Ju-on, but I was younger and with a whole group of people, so this time I watched it right, alone in the dark, and yeah, it was much more effective. This is a much quieter affair than Kayako's rampage. A reporter is doing some digging on this videotape as people are dying left and right around her. But we spend less time on the attacks themselves and more time with the grieving loved ones. The music is downright haunting in some places. It is expertly done. Shot really beautifully too. It feels like Ringu got to big budget territory much quicker. The contents of the tape are much closer to what you'd expect. But I'll tell you what, they go to town investigating it, even bringing it to the sound booth. It's interesting that the curse gives the victims so much time. That allows each individual to fight, cope, and deal with it in their own ways. Some people panic and fight it to the end, others spend their last few days with their family. It's like a twisted version of the stages of grief. Sadako looks just like her modern self now, and it's much more emphasized that her powers come through psychic ESP this time around. It's chilling. I can really see why this film gave birth to the entire J-horror movement. I definitely recommend you checking out this film for yourself. Thankfully, unlike a lot of other films I'm about to talk about, this film is very readily available. Which brings me to a very confused sequel. In a bizarre move, Ringu and Rasen were released at the same exact time as some plot to increase revenues. They were filmed at the same time by the same production team, and even some of the cast was the same. I've never heard of that in my life. Can you imagine Force Awakens and Last Jedi being released on the same day? Ringu, of course, was the breakout hit, and Rasen was quickly forgotten by the masses, soon to be replaced by a real sequel. But we'll come to that later. Looking at Rasen by itself, how does it fare now? I know this film is based on Suzuki's second novel, Spiral, but I couldn't tell you how well this film represents it since I've yet to read that book. I'll tell you what surprised me though. I think this is a perfectly acceptable sequel. When I read that this film flopped, I was expecting trash, but had this film been released with some actual time in between it and Ringu, I think it would have done fine. Maybe audiences didn't even realize it was supposed to be a sequel. Not like it had a 2 at the end and being released the way it did. I don't know, I mean, it's a theory. Apparently, it's been mere days since the end of Ringu. The reporter and her son have turned up dead now too, and now more people work to discover what's the deal with that weird tape. It hasn't even been that many films yet, and I'm already scoffing at every character that comes by, and it's like, wow, what a creepy story. I don't believe it. Yeah, might not want to go with your gut on this one. There's a bit of tragedy in this film too. We spend a lot of time following the girlfriend of one of the characters in Ringu who died by the tape. She was a very minor character before, but in this film she actually has some deep scenes. The tape is the exact same. Like literally, it's the exact same video, but kudos to the film for taking the scene in a different direction. There's only so many times you can watch people watch the tape all bug-eyed and scared about it. I also like this guy's plan of, rather than passing the video along to spare himself, he makes sure that there are no other copies so that the curse ends with him. Clever guy, noble too. There was even one scare in Rasen that freaked me out more than anything in Ringu did. All that's worth praising, though I still think Ringu is the better all-around film. But this is solid too, and it's a shame that weird behind-the-scenes decisions doom the film to failure. I guess if I had to say anything bad about it, it feels kinda weird to watch people discover the origin of the tape again after spending all of Ringu doing that as well. But I get the feeling I'm gonna have to get used to that in this Ring marathon. And Rasen's use of Sadako this time was very odd, very confusing. I don't want to spoil it because it's basically the ending, but it certainly was unique. It only took 1 year for Rasen to be completely replaced by Ringu 2. Ringu 2 is not based on any of Suzuki's books, nor does it follow up on anything from Rasen. It's a straight sequel to the original Ringu, and just like Ringu, it was incredibly well received. The boy and his mother from the first film actually show up again, shedding some light as to what happened to them after Ringu. The kid is starting to develop a little ESP of his own, which makes him very much resemble Toshio. I mean, look at this shot. You could have shown me this and said it was from Ju-on and I would have completely believed you. Though this kid's got a much better deal than Toshio. I mean, this film practically gives him the Force. I can't say much about Sadako because unfortunately she was barely in the movie, but she is starting to look closer to her American given look. We do get to see some scenes from the tape actually playing in real time, which is kind of cool, I gotta admit. It is getting difficult to keep track of all the characters in this series. That wasn't necessary in Ju-on. They'd shift protagonists seemingly with every entry. Each film, we jump from person to person as they were, well, axed. Here, though, there's a much more of a linear narrative, with a bit of a bump in the road thanks to the Rasen retcon. We get more scientific explanations of the tape and how it works and the psychic connections that come about it. But I don't know, this all kind of feels like Rasen again, just a bit higher quality. And I mean, do we really want things like that to be explained to us at all? It feels like there should be some things left to mystery. Amazingly, the tape is only played for about a fraction of screen time, and this is the first time that it's actually destroyed. But it was only a copy, of course. The ending is pretty wild. This is where Ringu 2 starts to really become its own thing, feeling more like Carrie than any J-horror I've seen prior. Sadako's looking great here, and she talks! That is so bizarre. Sadako really is completely different than Kayako. Ringu 2 was alright. It retreaded a lot of similar ground, but had enough to keep itself afloat as a solid sequel. Though a tad convoluted, it certainly wasn't bad. Now it's the year 2000, and the Ringu series has been struggling trying to advance the franchise forward. So they decide to go the opposite direction and make a prequel, Ringu's 0 Birthday. Instantly, this film feels more modern than the ones before. The camera work and production values fit with what you would expect from the new millennium. We get to see a real, in-the-flesh Sadako this time. Rather than watching reporters talk about her origin story, we see it play out in front of us. I never expected that we'd get such an intimate, personal look at Sadako. I was worried that this would affect her captivating power, like it'd demystify her too much, and we'd lose what would make her great in the first place. But no, not here. Going back in time like this hasn't ruined the character one bit. After all, Sadako's story has always been a tragedy through and through. Yuki Nakama plays Sadako with such a shyness, a girl who likes to act in plays, who desperately wants to be normal instead of a girl with incredible power and a doomed future. It's not an easy thing to play a human version of an established monster, but she is believable, and the movie doesn't overuse her. Sadako actually ends up attempting a romance with the only person that seems to be interested in her. See, this is all stuff that I would scoff at if it was in Ju-on. Like, I don't want to see Kayako's dating years, but this is quiet, tragic, and sad. Now, what that does mean is that this film is the least horror of the bunch so far. Oh, it has its moments for sure, but it isn't trying to scare you as much as before, rather make you feel sympathy. It takes almost 50 minutes of this movie to go anywhere close to a scare, but after realizing what this story was going to be about, I changed my expectations for it. When there are scares, they're usually more human, for lack of a better word. Nothing goes right for the poor girl, and it's very depressing. Surely a much different feeling than anything I've gotten watching films like this in the past. We're so used to seeing these characters in a certain way that it's shocking to see the human behind the hair. I'm pretty thrilled with this one. And with that, we conclude the original quadrilogy. After this, the series would take a short rest before its American debut. But not all was quiet in the Ringverse during this time. In 1999, there were 2 other Ring oddities that don't really fit anywhere. First, there was a television series, Ring the Final Chapter. There were a total of 12 40-minute episodes, but a sequel show called Rasen came out only a few months later, adding another 13 episodes. Now, I admit I won't be diving headfirst into this show, reviewing each episode, because, well, there's so much to cover here that I need to cut off somewhere. I did watch some of episode 1, and it's nothing to go crazy over. See, the movies were getting better and better at this point, so it's just jarring to go back to TV quality budget. I did want to mention it here, but I don't know, perhaps this is something that we'll talk about more in detail another time. What I will be talking about now is the Ring virus. Essentially, this film is Ringu again, but instead of being made for and in Japan, this one is from South Korea. This is some weird in-between of Ringu and Ring Kanzenban. It claims to be purely adapted from the book, but has elements that were definitely inspired by the Japanese film. There's not a whole lot new here though. If you've been marathoning the movies like I have, you might find yourself struggling to keep yourself interested. Although it is neat watching a different culture's take on the franchise, and it is always great to see Sadako do her thing. In terms of a horror movie, there's not much here, but for a Ring fan, it could be a breath of fresh air, or at least something a little bit different if you're trying to watch them all. But unless you're very curious or a completionist, I'd spend time watching Ringu or Birthday instead. And with that, we've covered everything of the original series, because after this comes the American remake and a new wave of momentum will form with it. But I do have to stop here for now. There's a lot coming up, and I don't want to make you guys sit through a 40-minute video. So I hate to do it, but part 2 will be on its way soon. When it is finished, you can click right here to go straight to part 2. Until then, thanks for watching, and thanks for all the support.